Welcome to the upstreamlife.com. I'm your founder and editor, Vishal Krishna. I love talking generative AI. I've done many shows on this, but it is impacting people, but it also means people are going to work harder and better with generative AI. I have Chander Damodraran talking to me. He's from Brillio. How are you?
I'm very good, Vishal. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for getting me here today.
I'm lucky to have you because you're going to share all the knowledge. What is Brillio? What is Brillio?
See, Brillio is a digital transformation company that we founded about a decade ago. Our intent was that we did not want to do 100 things for our customers. We wanted to be focused on solving one thing, and that was digital. And what we did was, for us, digital is essentially a sum total of 4 key services. That is customer experience, platform product engineering, digital infrastructure, and data and AI. When you mix all of these 4 in different combinations, you're actually sitting and solving customer problems in different ways. That's what Brillio is all about.
Absolutely. Brillio is also a 2,000 member organization within India, but it's a 6,000 member organization globally.
Wow.
So it's a transformation company. So what are we going to talk in the podcast?
See, as Brillio, we started off, this whole decade. And what has happened is, we have seen different types of behaviors, the whole world of transform, build, run.
Yes.
Today, that's the world that continues to be there. But the world is also now shifting towards more run, transform, and build. So what we're going to be talking in this podcast today will be a combination of how transform, build, and run is evolving, how build, run, transform, and build is evolving. We'll talk about all of that as part of us.
So we're going to cover generative AI, mainframes. We're going to go back in history. We're going to come back to the present. It's something that you will enjoy, guys. So write to me and I'll get Chander to answer it for you. And the company is called Brillio. Enjoy the podcast. Chander, thank you for coming to my studio. Always humbled for a large tech business to come to my studio. I enjoy what you're building in generative AI and everything. I think the audience will appreciate it. But firstly, I want to know what Brillio means.
So Brillio is basically, we started off, a decade ago. Our intent was we wanted to do something very different. And we wanted to be known for doing that really well. So the name was formed, through a very, unique experience that we actually built. And it basically meant, driving a brilliant spark in each one of us. So that's how we started it off. So a decade ago, my CEO, Raj Pamodia, he said, I don't want to be known for 100 things. I want to be known for one thing, do it really well. And that's how Brillio was formed. So we are focused as a digital transformation provider for our customers, very focused on solving digital problems.
Okay, very good segue into digital transformation. Exactly 10 years ago, the world started talking digital transformation. Perhaps a quick history. We all know mainframes. After mainframes, there was this movement towards the cloud in between, right?
Yeah.
Then people started, bifurcating the cloud into many things: public cloud, private cloud, hybrid clouds, whatever. And the technology is now moved to generative AI from a experience perspective. But mainframes are still important. And you want to set the context because I want to tell the audience that industries will not migrate to new things fast, but they will try to adapt new technologies in a framework of the old.
Yeah.
So it'll be a mix and match.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that history quickly?
Absolutely. See, I think what used to be mainframes, people used to have SaaS systems. All of these are more than 30 years old,
Yes.
40 years old. None of those are going away. I think the transformations that used to happen, right? I think you gave a good segue, Vishal, in terms of saying mainframes became now cloud. In fact, I used to be part of the journey. So Microsoft used to have this thing called Azure for my voices. We had basically said you should have this. So I used to be part of the transformation stories. So cloud came in, then came APIs, then came, those whole experiences, multiple channels, so on and so forth. But all of this is with the intent of how the world is, consuming each of these services. So your core systems that kind of runs will be your mainframes, will continue to exist. Some of the newer systems in terms of being on cloud continues to drive. And then there will be a combination of some data centers. So all of this will be the amalgamations that you will see in any industry. But I think what is important and the pivot that we are seeing is how your consumption is happening and hence how the users of those consumptions, right? Which means there's going to be more mobile experiences, which was probably a decade ago never used to happen, or maybe it used to be in a smaller fashion. So that is the shift that is happening. So I think as the world keeps changing, a lot of these technologies will continue to be there, and then there'll be coexistence of new technologies that's coming in. And I think generative AI in the last couple of years since the GPT release, I think there has been a mad frenzy towards saying everything is AI. But there is a reality in terms of how AI is being used, at least in the last 6 months or so, we are seeing a lot of tempering of using AI in engineering, using AI for doing a lot of routine tasks, right? Those are areas where we are seeing a lot of value.
Interesting. So let's, for the benefit of the audience, let's start from generative AI and move backwards.
Okay.
I want to move from the future to the past kind of a thing.
Sure.
So how are they using generative AI today? I mean, how do you go build systems for the greenfield project, maybe brownfield? Since most of the large companies are brownfield, let's talk about the brownfield guys. How are they talking about, how are their CTOs, CXOs coming and saying, hey, what is about generative AI that you can adapt on my business?
Absolutely. So end of the day, when you look at AI, it's largely driven through mathematical modeling, right? So today, the large language models that we all talk about is all nothing but your statistical models. And these are models that have been pre-fed, pre-trained. In fact, there was a anecdotal news that I kind of heard that it said OpenAI invested about $100 million to train their GPT-4o, which was the latest model that came out. So end of the day, these are all pre-trained models.
Yes.
So when you look at these models, and now you kind of say how this is being used. So AI in its own term has been looked at independently, right? So this has been there for many decades. So generative AI is a new kid. But if you look at it, AI as such, it's been there for many years. It used to be in the form of machine learning, natural language processing, right? And then this new world of generative AI and all of that has come in. The usage that we are seeing today with customers, largely, Vishal, would be in terms of saying how AI can be infused, for example, in engineering processes. Can I shift left my software engineering process to become a lot more resilient and a lot more quicker with the usage of AI? Simple things like, for example, can I scaffold my code? It used to be there before.
Yes.
Now, can I do that? Can I automate the process of testing? Can I automate the process of code conversions? These are things that can be used effectively. The other side is on the data engineering. There is so much of data that comes out. Today, there is your typical databases, your RDBMSs, you have your document DBs, and then with the internet explosion, I think there's massive amount of unstructured data. Can I make sense of all of this data?
And that's becoming an LLM kind of a model.
That's becoming where your generative AI has a lot of massive push. So data engineering, product engineering are two areas where you're seeing significant amount of investments. And that's how, even if you look at the Gartner's hype cycle that came out recently, it talked about AI engineering being on the high. The Gen AI basically being in the trove dissolution, right? And that's because you can't force fit generative AI into everything. There has to be certain, approach that needs to be done. At Brillio, we follow this problem of, looking at customer business problems and then saying solutions could be many, and technology can be the levers that basically deliver those solutions, right? So when you look at that lens, I think the way the consumption is happening today is how AI could aid and add value to what
I'm glad what you said is true. Technology is not the solution. The solution uses the technology.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And give us a case of how some of your customers, don't name your customer, of how somebody said, okay, we'll think of generative AI, but we may use a large amount of teams. Today, people say that for LLMs, there's still data annotation happening. There's still people to the problem, but people are always needed. It's not as if generative AI will replace everybody, right? Where are we today in that segue?
So good question, right? So the generative AI, like I said, the hype on, forcing AI into everything has started to...
There's a disillusionment there,
right? That disillusionment is happening. And so we are seeing usage of AI in a lot more pragmatic and purposeful use cases. So one example of a telco customer that we are working with, we are looking at saying, how do I basically build out their autonomous networks? So today, for example, if in our case, right, like we are using mobile providers, when our network call drops, why does it drop? It could be because, there was some problem with our phone. There could be a problem with the network. There could be a problem with the cell tower. There could be many reasons why it would fail, but the experience is lost. And then potentially a customer churn can happen because of that loss.
Correct.
So what we are doing is, when you start to build, especially with the, the 5G and, the way the world is evolving, these are not necessarily physical devices, right? These are all like network functions which are deployed in some public cloud.
Absolutely.
And these are the ones which are actually running your services. So today what is happening is, how do we bring in an AI to basically drive a better experience for customers? So we are building out what we call as a network copilot for one of our customers.
Okay.
The whole idea is very simple. Any point in time is my network is failing. How do I auto-remediate those networks? And how do I basically elevate the customer's experience without impacting the behavior? That's a very purposeful use case that could be applied in the context of a telco.
Okay, it's a people plus AI kind.
It's a people plus AI. It's not everything is AI, but there's a lot of data that comes out, right? Like, for example, your cell towers give you data, the end users give you data, so on and so forth. How do you bring everything together?
Okay. In old days, in the cell tower context, whenever there was a disruption, there was always a alert. That was an automated kind of machine learning system that was already inbuilt. But from the AI context, how did they apply it?
So what happens is today, a lot of the correlation that needs to happen, event correlationing, that used to be part of your ML.
Yes.
But now what we have done is to extend that thought process even further, saying the entire value chain of user experience, if I have to look at it overall.
Yes.
How do I automate the process? So there are three personas, if you can think of, Vishal, right? One is as end users. My experience shouldn't get impacted. But then there could be frontline people who are on the job, who have been asked to go and fix a tower, say, for example, replace a part. Now, if I'm a new person to the job, I don't know the job.
Yeah.
So how does knowledge management, kind of happen, right? This could be a long document that I could have written, or I could teleprompt this whole process, basically saying, I can automate the whole thing, saying, do this, and do this. It automates the process. So AI today is being used a lot in knowledge management. AI is used a lot in observability. AI is used a lot in terms of also remediating. These are your three steps that I would say in terms of how AI.
That's very fascinating. Now, let's go back to the past, because this has to start with the ADM or application development maintenance that all of us, that Indian firms were known for. Today, you see yourself that we've gone from ADM to these kind of things, right? That is the transition that's happened. Is that largely because of customer need, or would you say that technologies have evolved so fast that it took people like Brillio to go and say that we will bring in the solutions for all of you? Typically, do clients know these changes from an ADM mainframe side to all the way to now? Because there are hype cycles, Gartner puts out the hype cycles, all the CTOs are aware. Then there's this funding cycle that everyone, should I fund a particular project to be too small experiments? How's the typical sell that's changed for you from an ADM's time to generative AI?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Vishal. And it also ties back to the point that we started off, which is how buyers are today using it, right? Like, what is your end users looking for? For example, the pandemic happened, people shifted all the behaviors towards digital, which basically meant what used to be, a combination of, let's say, people, processes, and, papers, and so on and so forth, all became digital. So I think that's the shift that keeps driving it. And I'm saying, the next decade probably is going to see more of these type of behaviors, right? So to your fundamental question, I think from an ADM world to today, if you look at the ADM world, used to build, I have a customer comes to me with a problem, I'll solve that particular problem. We have another problem, we'll solve that problem. Especially in a large organization, the enterprise customers where we support, you will have so many different systems. And at some point in time, what happens is it starts to breed silos. Your data can't be shared together. For example, we work with a big insurer in Europe. And for them, the policies that they roll out and how those policies are correlated to how the experiences are, right? How many of my policies are actually in use? How many of my policies are really beneficial? How many of the policies are really impacting, let's say, users or being consumed high? I think the data is completely on two different systems. They cannot make the merge and they can't say what's happening. So the shift from ADM started to become more product specific. And then from product, it became more platform specific because you started to build a common layer. And then you said, let me have different apps as experiences that are tenants on top of the platform. That was the shift that happened. And now what we are seeing is, to your point, on usage of AI, the platform architecture or the platform behavior is what we are seeing becoming more and more relevant. So your platform engineering is powerful. But along with that, I have experiences for different personas. I have experiences for different, usage, different geographies, different, demographics, so on and so forth, right? That's how the shift is happening. So AI is now becoming a good, powerful tailwind that's driving a lot of the shift across the board.
It's interesting. So the programming languages can be as many, but that doesn't matter. You can apply it in any context.
It can be applied in any context. That's why I started off with the theme, right? You want to solve a business problem. The problem can have multiple solutions, and the solutions can be solved using multiple technologies. Now, you obviously don't want to give a new idea to a customer when they have a massive amount of, let's say, investments into people, in terms of technology on a certain technology stack. So you want to keep it very close to it, but then you kind of extend them towards this new world. That's how you typically try to position it.
Let's now move into the segment where we talk about the 4 core segments that you operate in. There is a lot of transformation. Again, this podcast is about transformation. It's beyond digital, right? In many ways also. let's talk about healthcare, one of the most highly regulated industries in the world, mostly so in America. And there's many things. One is you mentioned to me earlier that Obamacare played a vital role in bringing certain changes about how things should be exposed to the customer. That's one. And there's timeline to care. The care providers and insurers should bring it down to 15 days, right, instead of 33 days. All that is not possible without technology.
Yes.
So how does it work from an American ecosystem point of time in healthcare today? Where does Brillio see opportunities?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So first of all, the 4 sectors that we operate is around banking, finances, healthcare is one sector, health and healthcare and life sciences is another sector where we operate. The retail and the CPG business is another area that we operate, and then we work in the high tech and the telco. So that's our sectors that we operate. So specifically on the healthcare, again, it's a regulated business. So they're broadly within that 4 key areas. One I would call as your payers, which is where the insurers, and to your question, kind of relates to, Vishal. And then there are the providers, there are your pharma companies, and there are your medtech companies. So one of the things that you talked about on this whole healthcare, especially with the payers, if I think about it, a couple of years back, there was a mandate that came by, a regulatory norm that came by, which basically talked about pricing transparency. So when you think about pricing transparency, every one of the payers in the American market had to basically align and open up their pricing details to every other competition. So that way, if I was to get a MRI done, the MRI price for, with one of the providers could be $1,000 versus another could be $100. So as end users, I should have the choice to basically pick which one to work with. Now, when this came in, every one of the payers, and with their big systems that they had built, and some of these are in mainframes.
As simple as that, they cannot expose it?
They can't expose it directly because some of these are mainframes. So it requires a significant amount of transformation to happen before it could be exposed. So what we used to do was to basically take this data, and there's a massive amount of data, right? It's massive amount of data. Each state does it very differently in the American context. So you have to pull all of this data out, marry the content, look at what the pricings are, expose this in a format that could be consumed by the other partners as well, because otherwise you're not in compliance. So a big part of transformation exercise that I would say is this whole platform architecture that we are building out for a couple of these large payers. And with that, we actually expose these as APIs, could be consumed into a mobile app, could be consumed as an experience, however, right? That was what was the shift that we started.
It's interesting. That means you don't really turn off your mainframes. You're just pulling out the data, restructuring it, and then creating a pipe towards these digital experiences.
Absolutely.
So it'll be new digital infrastructure also in a way.
Potentially, right? Because most of a lot of companies and a lot of our enterprise customers go with the cloud-first approach, go with the mobile-first approach, experience-first approach. Those are the things that continues to happen. The mainframes are there for some more time. But there is a transformation that we do see that is happening where we are seeing this new world and the old world also kind of coexist.
It's interesting that we have to talk about why this old world wants to also move into the cloud. People say that it's data protection, but many of them are moving to the cloud according to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So especially if you look at, again, the regulated industries, whether it's a banking or whether it's a healthcare and life sciences business, they are adopting cloud, massively. And cloud, is end of the day, for us, it's a tier 1 data center, right? Where you look at all the hyperscalers, they're all tier 1 data centers. As long as we put the right set of controls, whether in terms of data, whether in terms of security, in terms of applications, behavior, etc., I think we have a very good way in terms of how these applications can be made, on the cloud, but they can also be still relevant.
One thing which hasn't dropped from the hype cycle is security. In every quadrant, security is around.
Yes.
It's the only thing that I've seen consistent across life cycles.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. Security, I think, has become a lot more pertinent and a lot more important in this current world, especially because we are all digital first and everything is in digital. It's and you've seen so many stories of how people get hacked, how customers get hacked. I think security first approach is going to be fundamental in a world where you have disparate set of systems, which could be a combination of data centers, cloud, and multi-cloud in a lot of cases we see. I think security is your number one factor.
So in your case, would you build a security practice as well?
So as part of our transformation story, security is a big part of how we drive it. There is a specific focus around security as part of our digital infrastructure. That's part of one of my colleagues' team who basically drives it. But that's an important focus for us.
Here's the case. I was at the Python conference recently, and a lot of the kids, everyone's so used to the consumer world, the Amazons and the Flipkarts, the Netflixes, the OTT, where content is consumable, and it's the content world, YouTube.
Yeah.
They want enterprise applications to be like that, but I have to tell them that you cannot expect that to go that way, right? It won't. It should not also. Do you think it should go that way, where everything is so fast, because security is a concern there?
It is. So again, especially for the regulated industry, it is definitely a big concern. Like, for example, for the healthcare industry that we were speaking, if I had to make an application HIPAA compliant, there is a long process, what we call as validated applications, that needs to be done before I can say I'm compliant to the norm. The same happens with the BFS world as well, right? If I have to be self-compliant, it requires a significant amount of time. So while I love the experience part of what people has been talking about, I think that's the way the world is going, but it will be at a slightly different cycle than the way, a typical consumer-first behavior can.
Perhaps my question was also about how these employees coming in should appreciate the value of working for a compliance industry. It requires a lot more effort and patience. Not patience in terms of listening into the compliance or reading about compliance books, but that's the challenge also, right? That's the beauty. You're building let's say, a chassis to speak based on what somebody has provided. Your spec has been provided. That's much harder, right, than the consumer world.
Absolutely.
How is the retail world changing now? You also serve retail. The omni-channels they talk about, what they call it, the aisle-less store, many of them. That industry is, I don't know whether security is still important there, but their experiences matter. Absolutely. So how are you guys preparing for that industry?
So very, very good question. Again, retail, every industry is going through the transformation story.
Yes.
Right? Now, a lot of people had this perception that the regulated industries are slow. It's actually the opposite. Regulated industries are actually very fast with respect to embracing of technologies, as long as it can be compliant with their organizational standards, as well as the industry standards, so on and so forth. Retail industry as such has always been a transformative business. A lot of customers today, because it's a very consumer-focused business.
Experience is everything.
A consumer experience focus. So if I walk into a store, if I don't get the type of experience that I'm looking for, I would basically lose my, I would be lost as a customer, because to that person or to that organization anymore, because then there's 5 others who are competing for that same space. So today, transformation in the retail is much, much faster than anybody else, right? So you're talking about today either mergers happening where people are bringing in their experiences together. At the same time, this whole consumer-first behavior where I'm able to personalize to something for you, where I'm able to give you offers that are meaningful to you. I can continue to retain you. Customer retention is a big part of a retailer strategy. Whether you're in the e-commerce world or whether you're in a store world, doesn't really matter.
Or the integration of the two.
All of these, right? At one point in time last year, I think people were also talking about metaverse as an industry, right?
Which again,
it's set into disillusionment, but I think gaming as a world still exists.
But gaming is huge,
Yeah, it is huge. And there are people who are gamers who still love to, continue to play the game, but order for like a meal or something.
Yeah, with voice.
Yeah. So those worlds exist. So it's a question of how you take a consumer-first approach. There could be channels, and that channel basically becomes your driver. So today, for example, delivery, right? Most of our folks, as users, we all deliver or order from
these apps. Yes.
Right? That is a big part of the shift in terms of how some of the restaurants behave, how the retailers behave with respect to consuming and supporting that particular model. So digital first world is where everything is transforming.
That makes India very special, right? We have leapfrogged certain worlds, especially on the payment side.
Yes.
And also the brand side. A lot of experiences are digital.
Yes.
People watching this should realize in America, there's so much opportunity with many companies, but they've not yet moved completely digital in many ways.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So would you say retail is the most, what would be the highest segment for you in these four verticals that you serve? What would be the highest in terms of revenues?
So in terms of revenue, or banking and finance would be the highest. That's where we make the most amount of our revenues, followed by the retailers.
And again, in banking, it's proper banks, or would it be brokers and
so both the commercial banks and the retail banks would be a significant part of our,
Okay. How is that industry shaping up?
That industry is going very well. Like I said, again, retail business is significantly high. Commercial business is extremely good.
Okay.
Especially because, there is so much of commercial activity that's going on. There's a lot, and these are across geographies, right? It's not just the American geography now. You're working into the European geography as well. So the commercial banks as a business is very, very high. So is debt management. So is,
Again, in the core banking side?
Again, on the core banking side, there's a significant amount of lift that we are seeing there as well.
Chander, for whatever you've set in context so far, it's all about the talent. And I've been reading reports from Zinov. I've hosted Zinov here, and the leaders tell me that there will be 3,000 GCCs or 3,500 GCCs by 2027 or by 2030 or more. What is that interest in India? I mean, our generation started it all, the aspiring global Indian engineers. We've seen that with Infosys, with Pros TCS. They have done it. And from there, plethora of firms came out, did that. And the talent has remained consistent. Do you primarily think they're coming here for the talent, and now our talent is world beating? What are some of the changes you've seen in 20 years, and what should be done about it?
Vishal, that's a great question again. See, what used to be location arbitrage, that used to be the model where people were looking at India as a low-cost center, number one, also for the talent, right? See, there are a lot of places where you will see, for example, the East Asia, like the Philippines and so on and so forth, right? Those also were regions that were popular, but our ability to have, great English-speaking, talent, and with people who are very focused on solving, business problems and, technology, depth, that was something that we saw definitely with East Europe, like the Ukraines and some of the East Europe, and then India, right? These are the regions.
So at that point of time, it was all ADM only, no?
It was
the
still
Y2K,
ADM type of business. So everybody used to say, okay, I want to keep it low cost. I want great talents and put this into India, move everything there. But I think the world is shifting now, where location arbitrage, price arbitrage is now leading to technology arbitrage. So today, what we are seeing is more of global deliveries. So you want to solve a problem and you want it to be solved right. And you want to have a talent that is, multi-talented to say, and able to do it. So India as a market has emerged very strongly on that particular area. And so today, what you said, 20 years ago, people like us, we started, but I think the next set of generations that we are seeing, including the colleges, are actually working with some of, firms. Like Brillio itself works with many of the colleges in India to actually shape some of their semester thinking, what needs to be part of their electives, what should be the focus, right? So that way, what is happening is the shift from, just reading something or doing your engineering, for some perspectives is actually shifting. And it is now becoming a lot more purposeful, where the industry is actually feeding into it and telling the colleges what needs to be the model of engagement, what needs to be trained to these students, so that when they come on board, they're not necessarily deadwood in the organization.
Absolutely. Great word. Deadwood is a great word. And basically, you're saying that today talent can be trained. They should be continue to be trained.
Absolutely.
Okay. But people appreciate that India has 2 million plus engineers, right?
Yes.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
And every year we churn out 2 million. There is room. We're not giving too much supply. Right?
Absolutely not. In fact, what you just said, we are seeing more and more GCCs being set up. In fact, we serve a lot of our American customers who actually have GCCs here.
Okay.
So with them, we work, in India with the GCCs. So the GCCs, to your point, is actually going to continue to keep scaling. The industry is going to go through its own heights, and you will see more and more need for quality talent to be part of this.
So the GCCs won't be fighting with the same pool of talent, right? They won't. So we have net addition should happen also.
Correct.
Will that happen?
Absolutely. So there will be some fights of talent that will continue to keep happening.
At the upper level?
At across the levels, right?
Okay.
I would say the mid-level is probably going to see more of those fights.
Okay.
Because they will need somebody with experience, somebody who comes with that mid-year experience. So that will happen. But for the fresh talent, college grads and coming out of colleges, I think those will be the ones who will basically be consumed, without any context, right? As long as these are trained and pre-trained in their skills.
Okay. From your time in Ambedkar College all the way back then in 3 decades to now, how have things shaped up in terms of an engineering context and the quality? Like I said, today everybody's on phones and all the engineers know some programming languages, the bright ones. There's also rural colleges, engineering colleges. Yes. Should there be a parity in the number of engineering colleges that we have between aspiration and really, are they dead wood? You know what I'm talking about, taking off from your word. Some of it is dead wood also in colleges. Your thoughts on the evolution? We did really well to serve that change, the transformation that happened between 99 to 2008. Then the world slipped into a recession, but came back with transformation. We've done well. What should we do further? I mean, in terms of enhancing that talent?
See, I think today, for example, AI is still a lot of new terminology for a lot of people, including some of us in the industry. But today it is being, taught in schools. Forget even engineering colleges. It's taught in schools. So that's the shift that we are seeing. So to your question, I think the seeding of the right knowledge or the right trainings is happening at a much earlier level than what used to be there before.
Yes.
So in my way, in my world, the way I would say is, one, there definitely has to be parity with respect to where your colleges are all being set up. It shouldn't all be in one place, concentrated. It needs to be across the board. So that way there is great talent that we are seeing in tier 2 cities. In fact, we as a firm are looking at tier 2 cities as a next wave for us to expand.
Yes, talent, good talent available in these smaller colleges.
And also it's about, working with some of these colleges, right? Like I said, you work with certain colleges, you train them through the course, you give them the right shaping in terms of, let's say the final year needs to be relevant set of things that we do as a firm. That when they go through the training, those are students that we can absorb directly.
Okay.
So that's how I would say.
Would that be internal training plus in colleges plus
some of our own employees will be part of the college, electives, and they will train the kids as part of this.
I think that's a good suggestion, right? With all these other engineering colleges that could become deadwood, they perhaps can gather from industry.
Absolutely. So we see that interest because you also want to have great talent to be part of your, workforce, and it has to be a workforce that is multidimensional in that sense, right? You can't only have, keep hiring from the market all the time. You need to nurture your internal talent. I have spent, time with firms where I've spent a decade plus, even in Brillio, if you see, I've been part of the team, from day one. So I think what is important for people is, do you get that opportunity to do, and have a mechanism to, to get to your high levels, right? As long as people understand that, then I think you stick to the flow.
Yeah, and engineering as a subject, a lot of people stay for a very long time, right? A lot of the American firms, my friends at Intel, or in say AMD, they stay for 20 years plus. And engineering guys do stay on longer, right? Unlike the marketing jobs or else, right?
Yeah.
So what you're suggesting is that if you're a great place to work, people come and stay, and that means you have to offer that training.
Correct. Right. See, I think this is a business where you need to be continually upskilling yourself. So today, if you look at a role like mine, I'm a CTO, but day doesn't go when I'm not sitting and reading myself.
Yeah, and you're coding still.
I code myself as well, right? So today, if I don't do this, I'll become irrelevant in the next 6 months, right? So it's important for each one of us. It doesn't matter what designations each of us carry. What is important is, am I relevant for the business? Am I doing the right things that basically makes me relevant for the customers to work with me? If we don't do this, we'll become so with the deluge of technologies Vishal you talked about, I think what's going to happen is we are all going to become irrelevant very soon. So it's important for us to continually keep learning and applying that learning
in the business context.
In the context of business.
Yes. Very rare. But do you see India in a good position for the next 15 years?
Absolutely. I think India as a market is scaling up. I think one is people look for political stability. People look for...
Which we've given for the last 3 decades.
Exactly, right? And you look for talent that is trainable.
Yes.
You're looking for colleges that are hungry for these type of trainings and engaging with, the industry, and then the whole educational community kind of coming together. So all of that is happening really, really well. So in my view, I see this setup really well for where we want to be.
As a leader, you've seen Bangalore grow from 3-4 million to 12 million plus people now.
Yeah.
On the infrastructure, as a leader, what do you expect from India if it has sustained this kind of an engineering growth? One of the things you do is product engineering, which is high-tech services.
Yes.
You need good talent for that. Do you think infrastructure is very important for us to build that talent?
Absolutely. I would completely agree. I think great infrastructure enables people to do their jobs better. So if I'm sitting and spending most of my time in traffic and so on and so forth,
which we all do in Bangalore,
my effectiveness goes away. So we have shifted to a hybrid model, at least letting people spend some time work and then come to offices on certain days. But I think great infrastructure is what's going to drive it. And I think as India, we are shaping that up. I think, the days when, between two cities used to take us many hours is now probably, we are talking in an hour, and sometimes in minutes. That's the speed at which we are changing. I think it's going to take us some time, maybe a decade, but I think we are on the right path.
Okay. As a leader, some of the things that you do, how do you detach yourself from managing this 2,000 member organization? How do you, one of the things you said is you'll constantly learn. How do you manage 2,000 people in a sense? Do you detach from work and do other things? How is your time spent? With your leadership skill, plus being empathetic maybe, and also getting work done. And also you perhaps go to colleges and speak as well. Yes. So how do you manage all these things?
That's a great question. So one, I think globally we are about 6,000 people.
Yes.
In India, it's about 2,000 plus. But I think what is important is we have created a multi-layer of, I would say, within the talent pool. So one, we moved away from typical hierarchies to more competency-based. So we shifted ourselves as a firm towards more competency-based. So if you are, let's say, an engineer, AWS engineer, for example, and you wanted to become a data scientist, there is nothing stopping you from taking that role as long as you demonstrate certain proficiency. So we enabled that. So as a firm, we said learnability, engaging people, engaging talent is what makes people stick to firms. Otherwise, people can find the next job and they can go to the next job, so on and so forth, right? So that is one part of it, which basically means today there is we use, Precipio as a tool basically to drive a lot of these, with the knowledge learning, continual upskilling that needs to happen. There are a lot of focused programs that we run. For example, my team runs what we call as architect programs. Architecting is a combination of art and technology. How do you solve problems? How do you frame the thinking? How do you apply? It's a very different world. So how do I enable my tech specialists to become architects? How my architects can become enterprise architects? This is something that we focus and do. So these are all very hands-on, intensive programs that we run as well. So we run that as well. We run a PM program, for some people. So the idea is we want to ensure that each of these different talents have a path. And that's the proficiency path that I was talking about. As long as I know what is my goal post and I can continually work towards that goal post, people are motivated and engaged to work in the firm. The moment you don't give them a path, that's when people get disillusioned and that's when people move.
And do you think all of them, you're actually setting up people for leadership? All of them could become chief architects in the future.
Yes.
Right?
I keep asking the question, right? How many of you want to replace my role? That's a question you want to ask there. Because end of the day, if you don't aspire to being that, then you're not being relevant, right? And that's where, again, it goes back to that relevance. Like, my CEO says, am I relevant for my customers? If I'm not relevant for the customer, then as a business, I don't need to exist. It's the same thing as a people. If I'm not relevant to what I'm doing, then I don't need to be.
That's a reality that everybody has to buy into.
Absolutely.
Okay. New regions that you want to expand to. You said till now you've been a US focused company, but you want to look at continental Europe. Why?
Yes. So I think when we hived off and we started off Brillio, we said we need to have focus. And focus can only come when you're not doing 100 things to everybody, right? So that's how we looked at North America as a market and we focused just on that. Now, what we have done is from the day one, what we started, customer focus is what we have always has been one of our core value. We've been expanding on that. We've been scaling on that. So as a business in the last 10 years plus, we just celebrated our 10th year anniversary in April. So we have scaled as a business. Now, what we have done is the scaling has happened both organically and in some cases we have done also inorganic acquisitions as well in the last few years. So Europe as a region for us, we look at it as, there's been European customers for us for some time. We are looking at that as a region.
Mostly on the banking side?
On the banking side, largely, but there is also a mix of retailers who are there, part of the mix as well.
Transformation.
So transformation type of work. So what we are seeing is the North American market and the European market are primed for, the growth and scale that we see, in the region. And hence we want to invest ourselves significantly. So we did an acquisition a couple of years back in UK, primarily around the BFS and ServiceNow capability. So we have expanded with that. And we will continue to expand.
So will that be a way of expanding, buying, and then going to markets? Would that be?
Yes, that is one strategy that we have applied. So we have our delivery centers now in Mexico and Romania, along with India.
Most of them would be AI kind of startups, or would it be customer experience kind of?
It would be combination. So, for example, we have a ServiceNow skills that we acquired. We acquired AI through Romania, and then Mexico is a very telco, and then BFS as well. So you will see different mixes that is happening, but our focus has been to grow certain set of customers in the regions. And so US and Europe continues to be.
Okay, what about your thoughts on Indian startups in the B2B space? Do you like there's so many SaaS tools out there, but in your case, transformation, do you see any companies doing good work in the B2B side, Chander? So, don't have to name them, but do you think working with them work? I mean, have you worked with any of them? Do you see them becoming your vendors for larger project acquisitions?
There are quite a few which are good in the B2B sector. And I think there are some of them we work with as well as vendors as well. But I think the market is probably needs to focus on certain specific problems that you want to really solve in the startup world itself, right? Because what happens is sometimes, with the startups, they basically can go very broad spread too fast. Yeah. And that's when they probably lose focus. So in my view, I think this focus again needs to come back. And that's what is going to
because they're directly selling to the customer rather than there's a partnership with firms like you.
Correct.
Larger firms in the IT space.
Correct.
What would you recommend them to do? Come work with you because you're a strategic. You understand customers.
Yeah.
So you could combine, right? That's one way.
Yes. So especially with some of the hyperscalers that we work with in the 360-degree model, we see an intent for, working with the hyperscaler, especially in a cell to, the cell with motion, frankly. We see that behavior coming up where, we're not just building out, let's say, a solution, for a specific customer. We also want to bring in, let's say, a mid-size or even a startup, right, into that mix to solve the problem, because they're solving let's say, a specific business problem.
Got it.
So a lot of the hyperscalers are actually guiding us, giving us some of the ideas of, some of the startups that we can work with.
So whether you could white label this product or the startup, that's what you want.
Or you can engage them, right? I think that's a model that we're seeing more.
Okay, we've covered all the business questions. My last question to you is, what has inspired you? I mean, homegrown Bangalore boy. What has inspired you to, become the corporate leader that you are? Is it books, movies, art, family? What has inspired you?
For sure. So I think books for sure. I have a massive library of books that I read, and I read a diverse set of books. But like I said, for me, I used to work in product firms before. So what used to happen was we were only focused on solving, problems. We used to solve code all day long. And then when I moved into the service business, so I said, let me continue to keep doing it. So my intent to continue to be relevant in solving problems continues to be my biggest focus. And like I said, if I don't read for a day, I'm actually relevant the next day, right? It's as simple as that. So a lot of technology-led reading, a lot of business reading, a lot of understanding markets, for example, right? Like what's triggering in, like I gave you the example of the regulatory kick in.
Correct.
So those are things that continually keeps me up to date, and that's what I keep focusing on. So all of my reading happens, which is
technical,
in the industry, customers, the businesses.
So you're looking at GitHub or other technical papers from?
Yes, a lot of the advisor firms, like the ISGs and the ISGs and the ISANs.
You look at those things.
Those as well, and then the analyst firms like the Gartners and the Forresters. They're all.
And you pick up code from the net and start looking at new things to program on. You do that?
We do. I think at least my team does. So I still spend a lot of time on looking at new tech. For example, AI, when it came on board, let me see how this is relevant for my customers. Right? That's where my focus will be. But my team, of course, as part of our overall innovation charter that we run within the firm, it's a big part.
And what is this innovation charter for?
So innovation is, like I said, right, it's about being relevant to our customers. So if to a banking customer, if I don't talk to them about, how their banking business can become better, and if I'm not driving that innovation-led thinking, so that lab thinking has to come in. So like I said, we can't do science experiments, but our focus has to be very, customer focused.
Yes.
So any one of the ideas that we pick up, we are okay to fail as quickly as we can. But I think it has to have a business plan. And that business plan is what I make my teams do. So what it does is it gives a sense in terms of I'm trying to approach a new thing. Let me test this market. Let's see the relevance. If the customers see it, then we'll do that as a great capability.
It's worked?
Yeah, it has worked very well.
Okay.
That's how we have scaled the business.
So that's great. Your hobby is now converted into something of ideation with your team.
Yeah, and that's why I enjoy this job. We know what I'm doing.
And you're also a tinkerer. You like tinkering with automotive.
Yes. If I wasn't an engineer, I would have been an automobile engineer. And I still do that as part of my passion. So me and my son, we both of us, spend our weekends either breaking things up or building things up. So we keep doing that. So
that's a good father and son relationship. Must be very relaxing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very relaxing. So that's our weekend hobby. We sit and spend time, removing things, putting things back together and hoping everything works, and it works. So it's just a good thing. So we know that we are...
So what is it? So are you guys into Lego stuff or?
Not Lego. We actually play with our own vehicles and, all of that. So it's okay if something goes wrong, we know how to get it.
No, that's very nice to hear, and all the best to you, Chander, and the Brillio team.
Thank you so much, Vishal.
Pleasure.